Morning, everybody. Welcome back to another morning in the desert. I was rereading the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu book, again yesterday, and it was talking about karma. And sometimes when I do that, it activates another download of information. And so I got some information relating to the idea of karma and sin again. And I posted the paper I wrote on Facebook, but for those of you who are on my Facebook page, I thought I would read that paper here so you can have that understanding as well. I talk a lot about karma in my first book, Hidden Layers of the Earthly Matrix, and this paper will expand a little more on that. The Western idea is that karma means that what we did in the last life determines what happens to us in this life, and this life determines the next, and so on. In my book, Truth Beyond the Earthly Matrix, I explain how that idea creates a loop process. And if the last life determines what happens to us in this life, and we don't remember the previous life, in other words, we can't make any changes because we don't know what we're supposed to be doing. There's no way to change what happens to us in this life because it's already determined. When the past determines the now and the future, or you accept that as a belief, you can't change the now or the future. What I got this time is that karma is another term for changing realities based on decisions we make as we go along. That means if you go left instead of right, one thing happens. If you had gone right, something else would have happened. And that's correct because each decision we make, every thought we have, and any action we take causes us to switch reality lines to where that decision, thought, or action plays out. In other words, it's a cause and effect. You're setting up a scenario, you do something, and then what you do then leads you down that path because of what you did. And it's the same thing. That's what karma really is. It's not as the accepted idea of one life to another life and you can't fix this and that. It's you're paying for whatever it is you're doing in this life because you're switching to the reality line where you will now experience whatever decision, thought, or action would have caused you to do. So for those of you who don't know, every path we can take in this life, in other words, all possibilities and probabilities, already exist for us to experience, depending on what we do. We're simply manifesting them. Switching to that reality line, therefore we experience it. Remember, it's all vibrations. The idea that karma causes us to pay for what we did is correct, but only in the sense that we switch to the reality line and experience what that decision or reality path leads us to. It doesn't mean someone is keeping score. And what you do in this life has to be corrected in the next life. And as well, you can change reality line again by making other decisions, thoughts, or action by realizing what you're doing is not leading you down a path that you really want to take. And you can change that and move to another one. So it doesn't have to be paid for time after time after time. Karma, or switching realities, would impact your next incarnation because the reality you're in when you pass on relates to the thoughts you have at your time of death. Those thoughts would be your beliefs, your fears, regrets, and attachments. It's the beliefs that you have about what happens when you leave this reality, combined with the fears, regrets, and attachments you still have at death that determine what you experience after leaving this reality. In other words, after death, you'll have to face those fears, beliefs, regrets, and attachments. Tibetan Book of the Dead talks a lot about that, and I mentioned that in my books as well. The idea that you will be facing those things when you pass on, and their shaman or whoever they are, their job is to talk to the person either before they die or just after they die, and let them know what they're going to be seeing and facing, and that helps them to be able to move on through that. And I address that a little bit here. Okay, for most people in this reality, particularly in the Western civilizations, but even in other ones as well, because there are a lot of religions that are accepted, and that's part of the default program. For most, after dying, it means going through the tunnel of light and being recycled back into the 3D reality timeline after. Let me try that again. For most, it means going through the tunnel of light and being recycled back into this 3D reality time after time to face those beliefs, fears, regrets, and attachments all over again. That's part of the default program. The tunnel of light is the pathway to and from the matrix default program of this 3D reality. In other words, everybody, no matter what your beliefs or thoughts are, when you leave this reality, you will go through that tunnel. But what happens to you once you get there is determined by your thoughts and your beliefs that you had when you died. And for me, it's a matter of what do you know? And your knowings will determine what happens to you once you get there. There can be nothing there, which I've experienced, nothing being there because I don't accept that default program and I moved out of it. For others, because they accept the default program, especially religions, they're going to go there and they're going to see what is expected. Their friends, family, loved ones, and so on, religious figures, and it's going to keep them going through that tunnel, and they're going to recycle again. So basically, you manifest your next life by your fears, regrets, and attachments you have when you leave this body. In other words, what you're expecting is pretty much what you're going to experience, because it's all, for most people, it's based upon that default programming. For those who understand and know who and what they are, you're going to experience something different because you can choose to. Just remember this. It's you doing that. It's you determining that next life, that next experience, not some god or deity that is keeping score and making you pay for what you did in the life you just left. You can escape the default matrix program, which is reincarnating into 3D again, by understanding what karma is and not buying into the readily accepted idea of how karma works. You have to deal with your fears, regrets, and attachments while you are here, so that at the time of dying, you will not be bound by them and have to recycle. Understanding who and what you are and what your reality is allows you to let go of those fears, regrets, and attachments before you leave here. And I address that specifically in my second book, Hidden Layers of the Earthly Matrix. Because of how this world is set up, I don't think any of us can completely get rid of all those things, fears, regrets, and attachments before we die. That means you may have to face any leftover fears, regrets, and attachments. The way to move beyond them without getting trapped in recycling back here is to understand that what you are seeing and facing are illusions. Hello, Foxy. Are illusions of the mind and aren't real. And that's what the Tibetan Book of the Dead shamans are talking to their people about, is the idea that what you're seeing is not real. It's an illusion created by your mind in order to trap you and draw you into it. And when you understand that, knowing that before you die will allow you to pass through those programs, those illusions, quickly and move to the reality line or next timeline or dimension, wherever it may be, that you want to experience. Sin is just a different version of that karmic program. The religious idea of sin is that you are born a sinner. It's the same idea of karma and having to come back here and pay for what you did in the last life, even if you don't remember. When you were born a sinner, you have to pay for what someone else did in another life that you don't remember. Sin and karma are the same program, with a different label, created for groups that believe differently in order to trap the most amount of people. When you believe in and accept either program, the outcome is the same. You recycle back here to face your fears, regrets, and attachments all over again. Basically, the illusion of the mind is creating the reality that you're going to, which is your fears, regrets, and attachments. And the idea of committing a sin is the same thing. You're not going to a hell as a physical place. It's a state of mind. But what happens when you're committing a sin that they call a sin, you then switch to that reality line, which causes you to experience the things that will follow along that reality line. That's really all it is. And you can change that simply by changing your thoughts, actions, and decisions. Once you start down that other reality line to a better one, when you realize, and that's how you get out of that karma, so-called karma trap, is by realizing that the line that you're on is not the line you want to experience, and you can change by changing your thoughts, actions, beliefs, and so on. Escaping from the default matrix program and sin and karma are the same, as I mentioned above, and that is facing and dealing with your fears, regrets, and attachments while you're here. So you can make your choice now on what you want to know, not believe. And when you leave this reality, you can decide the reality you want to experience. In other words, do your inner work. Face those things now so that you have a knowing that you don't have to deal with them again, a knowing that when you do leave, that what you're going to be seeing and experiencing, what you may see and experience, are illusions of your mind, and they are not real. Don't allow yourself to trap yourself into another recycling process. Then you can go on and enjoy other parts of the universe. I'm going to 5TA. That's my world. Anyway, have yourself a great day, folks.